suppressing this. We think we're the body, but it's the vehicle. Einstein said, this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from the prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. In other words, once we lose the idea that we are individual little me and realize we are all that is, we start to connect again with all that is, and not just with a few people around us who connect into our sense of individuality and Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith. Any picture of this theme, this type, is from a guy called Neil Haig. He's a great friend of mine in England, an artist, and he's a very, very original artist. And he has this unbelievable ability to not quite read my mind, because I do explain what I want and what I'd like him to portray and stuff, but he has this wonderful ability to then deliver a picture, and I go, crikey, if I was an artist, and I'm shite, I would draw it exactly like that. That's what was in my mind. It's an amazing connection that we seem to have. And this is the difference, a real important difference that I want to make. Okay, again, it's all words and it's how they're defined. I'm going to define the words for this day. Consciousness is the word I'm using for what we really are. All that is, has been, ever will be. And consciousness has an experience within this reality if it chooses to. However, as I said about we must take on a shell and all that stuff to interact with this reality, it's very similar to if you want to go on the internet, you can't just sit there in a chair on an empty desk and go on the internet. You need a conduit, you need an interface through which you can access that collective reality we call the World Wide Web, and it's called a computer. What consciousness does is exactly the same in a fantastically more sophisticated way. It takes on what I call the biological computer, the body, as its interface. And the body and its immediate energy field, I'm calling the mind. And the is very important. Because for me, the more that I kind of start to understand this, we talk about my mind, your mind, his mind, her mind. No, I would say that's not how it is. It's the mind. The mind is the interface between consciousness and this reality. And you can be a Wall Street banker over here and a New Ager over there and still be in the same mind. And what the conspiracy is about, in its primal level, is pulling us and our point of perception into the vehicle, into the interface, the mind, and out of consciousness. And what's happening now, and I'll get into this in the last section, is there are changes taking place vibrationally in this reality, which is helping people to open their minds to consciousness, and therefore people are, as we say, waking up from mind into consciousness. And the moment we start to do that, bang, we see the world in a completely different way. Why? Because our point of perception, our point of observation moves out of mind into consciousness. And the mind is a very good thing, because we can use that to interact with this reality. And the mind operates through something called thought, which is a very, very low level of perception. Consciousness operates through something I call knowing. It's all knowing. It's all that is, has been, and ever will be. Therefore, it's not constantly working things out. That's why when you enter a state of consciousness, you go into a place of silence. When you're stuck in mind or interacting with mind, that's what the chatter is all the time. The mind never shuts bloody hell up. Whereas you go into consciousness and there's silence. Why? We live in a world of things. And everything seems to be things. We live in a world of noise, constant noise now. But that's not the prime reality, though we think it is. The prime reality is consciousness, which is silence. It's silence because it doesn't have to work things out, because it knows. And we think silence is nothing. So we say, can you hear anything? No. Nothing. No. Nothing. And yet, everything comes out of the silence and goes back into the silence, because what consciousness is at its highest level is all possibility, all potential. And in the silence is all potential, all possibility. And then when I start talking, I'm pulling through sound one possibility out of all possibility, and now, through the senses, now I'm in one possibility. So when we have silence, and I start talking, the noise comes out of the silence. As soon as I stop talking, the noise goes back into the silence. And it's the same with space. With space, what is space? It's nothing. The reality here is things. But what defines this theater? As much as the things, the seats and the ceilings, what defines it is the nothing. And in the realm of things, things come out of the nothing, and then they go back. That's what's happening when we die. We're born out of the nothing into the world of things, and then the body goes back into nothing. And one of the things that stresses people out, if we could come to terms with it, would be a lot more helpful, is we're always trying to find stability and permanence in a world of things, when the world of things is, by very definition, totally impermanent. The permanence is the nothing, the silence, consciousness, which is what we always will be. And so when we come in to the mind, if we come in and hold that connection to consciousness, then we're in this world and we can use the mind to interact with it, but our point of observation is beyond it. And therefore we see things from this point of view. We become observers rather than caught in it. If we lose contact with consciousness, we come into this reality and we become prisoners of the mind in that eggshell. And now we're in this world and of it. And if we are in that state, we're not getting our inspiration and our knowingness from consciousness and getting a fix on who we are and the nature of reality. So where do we get it from? Through the five senses. And who's controlling that information? Those that control the media, those that control education, those that program one generation, called parents, who then program the next generation thinking they're doing the best for their kids. And so we have this mind-controlled society which is unconscious. Consciousness is like the ocean, the everything. Mind, of course, is a form of consciousness because everything is, but it's a much more concentrated and static and limited form of consciousness that we call mind and thought. And we call it intellect too. It's funny. It's not just funny. It's kind of explains why we live in a society that worships the intellect. Oh, he's got a great mind. Oh, he's mindless. Ooh, look at him. We worship the mind. We worship the intellect. We reward intellect, and we laugh and ridicule at those who come from a position of consciousness, because intellect literally cannot get its mind round the perceptions and perspectives of consciousness, because that's not where it's coming from. Let's just do that again. So if we open the mind, and all these phrases we use, and they're so, we're spouting these classic truths all the time. When we open our mind and let consciousness in, the mind becomes a servant to consciousness and not the governor of our perception. And that's the state that more and more people are starting to get into, and therefore their perception of reality is transforming in an amazing way all around the world. I've been to nearly 50 countries now. I think it's 48 or something like that. I tell you what, this awakening's happening everywhere. And the question is, are we going to be consciousness or are we going to be mind? Are we going to come from a perspective in our daily existence of being all that is, or little me? That's the difference between being free and being enslaved by these silly people in dark suits and those behind them. This guy